the United States has demanded that countries halt oil imports from Tehran beginning from May or face consequences from the U.S. This move would see a likely decline in Iranian oil export. Kyari Bukar, former chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, now joins me to discuss this and other dynamics impacting global oil markets. Kyari, glad to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you.
So is this a case of using trade as a weapon, generally speaking now? I'm not taking sides.
Generally speaking, yes, indeed. U.S. has used this tool subtly in the past. This time around, it's extremely blatant.
So are we moving from oil as a commodity for prospering nations, for improving economies, to oil as a weapon of war?
I think it's a combination.
Of trade war, to be specific.
What has happened in the U.S. is that they are now producing enough oil themselves, and therefore oil is not seen as a strategic commodity anymore. However, to the countries that are producers of oil, there is the natural resource curse, whether it's Venezuela, Nigeria, or any of the other oil-producing countries, with the exception of a few Middle Eastern countries that have a smaller population, that have diversified, that have used oil as a tool for development, and they do not necessarily need the oil dollars, petrodollars to live day to day. For countries that have become significantly strategic, say Venezuela or Iran or Nigeria, that tool can be used to manipulate those countries, and this is exactly what we are seeing in the case of Iran and the U.S.
So from moving from talking protectionism, which was hot topic for a while now, we've moved to settling down and then going to talking alliances. If you are my friend, talking about U.S.'s dynamics with Iran to right now. If you trade with Iran, we'll give you liberty for a while, and then now we bring in the sanctions, which is where we're at this morning. Trade with Iran, face sanctions from us. My friend's friend is my friend. My enemy's friend is not my friend.
Yes.
Should there be bodies, or can an OPEC come in as a regulator to say, let's not lose focus, guys. This is a commodity. We're looking at trading, we're looking at prosperity, we're looking at monitoring global supply. What you're doing is pressuring the price of oil and demand and supply. Can we have regulators step in at this point?
OPEC, remember, is a cartel. It's a cartel that is pushing for its self-interest. Therefore, the higher the price of oil, the better it is for OPEC and its members. Now, within OPEC members, there are alignments and realignments. Of course, there are some that consider themselves non-aligned. However, the interest of OPEC members, generally speaking, is for higher oil prices, including Russia, which is a non-OPEC member, but cooperating with OPEC member to see prices of oil go up. Now, on the other hand, we have Saudi Arabia and Iran in that part of the Middle East where there is a rivalry of some kind. Iran wants to dominate a piece of the Middle East, whether it's Iraq, Syria, or any of those places that have a higher proportion of Shiite Muslims. Now, Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, is trying to control a portion of the Middle East, including those two.
I see they're stepping up now. East Africa a few days ago, Nigeria a couple of days ago. What do you make of their new strategic alliance?
So it is those alliances that's playing out. So what we are seeing is the enemy of my enemy is my friend, sort of a relationship.
Yes, that's another way to look at it.
So that's why Saudi Arabia and Kuwait are saying they are stepping up with production with the waiver removal by the U.S. for those 9 countries that were given waiver when they said Iran oil should not be touched. Out of those 9 countries, I believe 5 or so are the ones that are importing Iran oil today to the tune of about 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day. So now what we have is that even as it exists right now, there is a dearth of supply of petroleum, crude oil of about 300 or 400,000 barrels right now. That's why prices have been inching up. With the announcement and impending deadline of May 1st, what we would see is a higher gap. And so those 2 countries are saying that we're going to increase production to meet those demand. I mean, that supply gap.
With the new strategic alliances that we are seeing now, with the new pressure, quote unquote, for forming strategic alliances, do you have fears that at some point we might begin to talk about not listening to OPEC's restrictions?
OPEC may become irrelevant over time. Well, crude petroleum itself is going to be irrelevant, but that's further down the road. However, as we see, for the short term, meaning this year particularly, U.S. has to tread very carefully because oil prices would go up. I would see oil prices at between 74, which is today's price, towards the 80 mark.
Oh, you see it going up
we see it
dynamics.
Going up. Yeah, we see it going up. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 80 is feasible this year, and this is what some of the emerging markets that are not oil producers would hate to see. It's going to be great for a country like Nigeria, whereby our deficits may be closed. However, it is still the playing out of strategic alliances, and therefore it may be short-lived.
Is Nigeria making moves, talking alliances? Are we making moves?
There hasn't been any clear...
We've seen Saudi come up here from the far east, from the other side of the world. We've seen them reaching out of their comfort zones to form alliances.
Saudi had made moves, but yesterday the Qatari Emir was in Abuja.
Yes.
Just for a few hours and went back. I don't know what the discussion is going to be like. I would be a fly in that room to hear what's going on. Nigeria hasn't expressed its strategic alliance vis-a-vis this particular issue because nothing had come out of the villa in terms of where we stand as a nation towards.
But we are still talking funding budgets with oil and then still debating benchmark on oil.
Unfortunately, and it is the benchmark of oil and the huge deficit spending and whether that we have a sustainable debt, etc., etc. Those conversations would still go on. Unfortunately, for a country like Nigeria, oil is still not closing the necessary gap that we have in our budget.
Come OPEC's next meeting, May or June, shall we anticipate a cut? I see you nodding your head already. Are they able to take definitive positions without first going back to resolve the main issues of oil is first commodity for prosperity and funding economies? When you begin to bring in sanctions, you're aiming at stifling these economies. Do they not contravene OPEC's regulations?
So what is going to happen for OPEC as we go in the short term is that there is going to be a bump by Saudi Arabia and Kuwait to satisfy their friend, so to speak, the U.S. But generally speaking, I think the price of oil would be, there is pressure on the price of oil as we speak. Yesterday it went up by over 2%.
So a 6 months high.
And yeah, right. And that pressure would continue because of the fact that countries like China, the growth engine has started. Countries like India, so oil imports will go up, but they would necessarily want to bring the oil that's near them to their markets, then go very far. So Iran is one of those countries that geographically speaking has been in their proximity.
Interesting and intriguing dynamics in the global oil space. We'll continue to watch out for these. Thank you for your time on the show.
You're welcome.
Kyari Bukar is the former chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group.